2 minutes.
We will. Well, you have full access to it, because you closed it for him.
Well, it's open now. It was only him and me. Working on the street. That's what happened.
Right. Yeah.
And I think
You put those auto feeders down with the cats, and my sister does.
I just seen you out there. We use that. That was planned. Yeah.
Elena,
I did, thank you.
I laid it on
Yes,
my home.
yep. Just John and Sarah.
Sarah didn't get hers and I understand.
Just a week.
My
sister
Sarah. Thermostats are watching it.
4122, you said?
Yeah.
Is his next job gonna be lighter?
Yeah. Those many things.
I haven't heard of this, can't find one.
It seems like it hasn't subsided much since the holidays.
Order for device and pledge allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Technical roll call, please.
Councilmember Robinson,
Here.
Mayor Coleman,
Here.
Councilmember Bauer,
Here.
Councilmember Epic, here.
All right. We have a motion made to adopt tonight's agenda. So the motion.
Make that motion.
Okay, how about Councilman Bauer makes it first, Councilman Robinson makes a second. Any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries. Thank you. We're moving on to tonight's consent agenda. Do I have a motion to adopt tonight's consent agenda?
I'll make that motion, Mr. Mayor.
Councilor Ludwig makes a motion. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Councilor Robinson makes a second. Any further discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries. Thank you. Our meeting open to the public. Jen, do we have any?
Jesse,
State your name and address, please.
Go. Jesse Jones, 7038 Ambassador, St. Francis. There you go. I was wondering on the development going to the east and south of our, well, east, directly east of our farm. You guys got lot A, it says it's for public benefit for PUD, but it only benefits 2 lots, 8 and 9. I'm wondering if that's a standard where if 2 people involve the public, where if we go to develop our farm, there's 200 and some acres there. We could say if it benefits 2 people around it, we can do it, or that would apply. And then also, is he able to subdivide lot 9 if Wrightsville develops his? Because it's 26 acres, or is there an asterisk on his title that says he can't do it because he already used up those lots before? Because it's 27.5 acres, I think. But if it was developed to the north 40 on Wrightsville's, he could have maybe 2 lots in back there that he could subdivide again. Wherein, if you get it done, you can keep repeating. For us, we had larger land, like 200 plus acres, and we got it all put in cluster homes. Could we come back and get another bite at the apple? Would be the question.
Kate, can you help us on this one?
so Mayor and Council, in regards to the public benefit, that is still being discussed. And that is an agreement that will come before council. PUDs are a standard in every one of our developments. from the Platinum Development, Green Valley to River's Edge. That is a standard that's applying, and we will definitely discuss that further with council when it comes back to council. In regards to the lots, currently city code in that area is zoned for 1 unit per net acres of 10, so it wouldn't be able to develop any further unless the zoning was to change again to either a rural residential or something. As the growth continues to both the east and west is kind of the trend. Is first we've got the agriculture, then we create PUDs, and then if something like the rural residential was continuing to go to the east and west, then, but as of today's city codes and subdivision requirements, it would not be able to develop any smaller than 1 property per net 10 acres.
But lot number 9 is 27 acres.
Correct, but the overall development of 147 acres allows for 14 homes, and he is capped at that 14 homes.
Okay, so he can't subdivide 9 again once they develop next to him. He can't say, I got 26 acres if he sold it to somebody and they say, hey, I got 26 acres, I want to split this up.
Correct.
Okay, and then who's gonna prevent people from hunting on a lot or that wildlife conservation? Is that gonna be to where the public can walk back there and say, hey, there's a dude hunting? Call the cops and say, get a stand, get him out of here?
Mayor and council, if that remains as a public property with the city just having the oversight that it remains a conservation easement, it would be to the owner of the public property or private property that would determine who can and cannot hunt on said land.
All right, so let me ask you this, when you say the city is an oversight to it, in what regard, what's our responsibility to the conservation?
It is our responsibility to ensure it remains a conservation property for the perpetuity.
All right.
So
for
it will
zoning
have a
purposes,
hard path for the city to review it remains.
okay, so if anyone were to come forth, it will remain like that. That's our oversight.
Correct,
Correct. But for the usage of it, it goes to the owner of the property. Or who
based
can
on the agreement of the conservation easement, correct.
So would the owner be the city and it's off the tax roll, or would it be the guy who developed it for Outlaw A?
She just said it's the owner of the property. The city is the oversight.
Oh, yeah.
It's not allowing it to be anything else but what it is, conservation area. Never to be rezoned otherwise.
Food for thought, speed limit is 55. You're not allowed to look on your phone. Who's gonna patrol it to make sure? You guys gonna have like a path to where somebody walks around it and,
I understand Ambassador is a county road.
yeah, but I'm saying the speed limit is 55, so the law is you go 55, right? Or am I done with that? I'm good on that one, right? So you say nobody can hunt here. The only person who can see said land is lot 9 and lot 8. So what's to prevent one of them from sneaking in there? Or are you gonna have a patrol that goes around and checks? Because I've caught people on our farm ground who shouldn't be there. So what's to prevent lot 8 and 9 from saying in
The
agreement?
responsibility of that goes to the owner of the private property. Our oversight only tends to go to reach out as far as rezoning that can never be rezoned for anything other than what it is, a conservation area. That's all she said, right?
Correct.
So the owner, basically,
But the owner of the land is the city, right?
no,
Oh, it stays in his. So, all
or
right,
just the oversight of the conservation area. It can't, in other words, the city can never rezone that.
okay,
It's a conservation area in perpetuity forever. No matter how many administrations come and go, it can never be changed.
okay, so it's unbuildable land that's gonna stay unbuildable. Okay, so nothing changed for. All right, that was my question.
All right. Anybody else? Okay. Good. All right. All right, moving on to, old business, I think this is right here, is that old business is Martin? Okay. 8A, East Shop Site Rezoning Ordinance 288, second reading.
Mayor and council, before you tonight is the second reading of the ordinance for the rezoning of 2 properties the city owns on Bridge Street. This is a housekeeping step to get the properties back in line with your zoning to the land use guidance of commercial. We had originally had it as high density residential for the purpose of the senior housing that they considered going there when we did the updated zoning map. This does not affect any current applications or uses at this time. I'm here to answer any questions.
All right, I pretty think we discussed this at the last meeting, so basically it's a second reading, just to follow up on the first, so I have no questions. Kevin, do you have any questions?
No, sir, it's clear to me what can take place here.
No questions.
No question.
I guess not. All right, so on that, do I have a motion to adopt, East Shop Site Rezoning Ordinance 288, second reading?
I'll make that motion.
Councilor Brown makes that motion. I have a second. Councilor Robinson makes a second. The ordinance is a roll call. Okay.
Councilmember Udvig,
Aye.
Councilmember Bauer,
Aye.
Mayor Feldman,
Aye.
Councilmember Robinson.
Aye.
All right, thank you. All right, moving on to item B, 2021 code revision, second reading. You want me to list every ordinance too? I can do that for the record. Ordinance 289, site plan review. Ordinance 290, principal uses. Ordinance 291, accessory uses. Ordinance 292, chapter 8. Ordinance 293, definitions.
Mayor and Council, before you tonight is a second reading of several code updates. This is from the update of our full zoning code. We occasionally come across things that need housekeeping. We track those and try to bring them all in whole to you for these updates. They're more of a text amendment. This includes cleanup from definitions, review clarification, use clarification, and standards. So there are the 5 actions tonight to adopt for those housekeeping and text amendment changes. And then 1 summary publication, which was also, I think, brought out as a second item. So with that tonight, this is a second reading. I don't know if you want to discuss anything specifically, but I'm here to answer any questions.
No, once again, I'm fine. We discussed it in the last meeting. I'm fine with that.
I don't have anything, it's just housekeeping.
Sir? Kevin?
And then,
Now we're gonna have to do a roll call per ordinance, right? Correct. Okay, so, let's see, do I have, I'll do this one by one here. Do I have a motion to adopt 2021 code revision, second reading, ordinance 289, site plan review? Do I have a motion?
I'll make that motion, Mayor.
Councilor Robinson makes that motion. I have a second. Councilor Goodrich makes a second. In ordinance, Jenny?
Mayor Feldman,
Aye.
Councilmembers Bauer,
Aye.
Udvig,
Aye.
Robinson,
Aye.
Okay, thank you. Okay, do I have a motion tonight to adopt 2021 code revision, second reading for ordinance 290, principal uses?
I'll make that motion.
Okay, how about this time, Councilor Robinson makes the first, Councilor Bauer makes the second. Then Jenny, do a roll call, please.
Councilmembers Robinson,
Aye.
Bauer,
Aye.
Udvig,
Aye.
Mayor Feldman.
Aye. Moving on to a motion for 2021 code revision, second reading, ordinance 291, accessory uses. Do I have a motion?
I'll make that motion.
Councilor Goodrich makes that motion. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Councilor Bauer makes a second. Jenny, roll call, please.
Mayor Feldman,
Aye.
Councilmembers Bauer,
Aye.
Udvig,
Aye.
Robinson,
Aye.
Moving on to 2021 code revision, second reading, ordinance 292, chapter 8. Do I have a motion?
I'll make that motion, Mayor.
Councilor Robinson makes a motion. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Councilor Goodrich makes a second. Jenny, do a roll call, please.
Councilmembers Robinson,
Aye.
Udvig,
Aye.
Bauer,
Aye.
Mayor Feldman.
Aye. Okay. Last one, code revision 2021 code revision, second reading, ordinance 293, definitions. Do I have a motion?
I'll make that motion.
Councilor Bauer makes that motion. Do I have a second?
I'll make the second, Mayor.
Councilor Robinson makes a second. Any roll call, please?
Mayor Feldman,
Aye.
Councilmembers Udvig,
Aye.
Robinson,
Aye.
Bauer,
Aye.
All right, thank you very much. Thank you, Kate. Okay, moving on to item C, resolution 2022-06, authorizing the summary publication of ordinances 289 to 293, amending the zoning code. Do I have a motion?
I'll make that motion.
Councilor Bauer makes that motion. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Councilor Goodrich makes a second. It's not an ordinance, I can just do a roll call, I just do a voice. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries. Thank you. All right, moving on to new business, ordinance 294, amending chapter 3, city code, first reading. That would be Parrish.
Mayor Council, for your consideration tonight is the first reading of the amendments for City Code Chapter 3, Section 2, Subdivision 3, Chapter 3, Section 2, Subdivision 5, and Chapter 3, Section 3, Subdivision 2E. Essentially, in a nutshell, what these amendments would do would not only help with the staff, but citizens in establishing their criteria for when to connect water and sewer should the use of the extended. And that counts for both water and wastewater. Obviously. If you guys have any questions, I'll be more than happy to answer them.
So Paris, this pertains to, as it says here, effective is best for the city for connections / disconnections being made from existing properties and or new construction properties.
Correct.
So basically, this has to do with, again, connections and disconnections.
Yeah, so should water and sewer be extended, if and when it's ever extended, it would essentially it would set criteria for which the residents have well and septic currently to connect to the water and sewer, the new water and sewer that's put in place. And criteria for when to disconnect as well.
So let me ask you this, just because I'm curious about this use expands, which, you know, is on the table, of course. And let's say somebody in a septic area on acreage still wants to maintain their septic and well, would they have to hook the system or they have an option to hook the system?
Essentially, what would happen is should the septic fail or whatever time requirement the city council gives, then they would be forced to connect or have to connect to it.
Okay, but until then, they're grandfathered in.
Mhm.
Basically. Anything else you have to say?
No,
All
no.
right, Kevin, you're.
That was my concern as far as, quote unquote, strong arm city, and it happened before in other municipalities where there have been strong arm individuals that had to hook up. What about hardship cases and or the age of a system? Usually if they fail, they're probably pretty old, but what if somebody's, is there any age or life expectancy on a system, say it's 5 years old, they've had a connection issue, they call to get a permit for repair, and then the flag goes up and says, well, we got a line problem here.
Right.
And does that give an opening for the city to step in and say, you gotta hook up?
Well, and again, not to try to strong arm anybody. I mean, I would.
And that was a loose term.
Right, you know, absolutely, but, you know, that's where council would come in and be able to work with the citizen, obviously. I mean, should that septic be failing, that hardship would exist to connect to the sanitary system. So that would essentially be on council to set a time frame for which they can connect to it. So.
Okay, that was my concern. That's all I have.
So basically, we come to this body to decide what, if we, you know, what the time limit is. So in other words, like Kevin just said, 5 years, brand new septic field, we could adjust for it, some flexibility to it. I mean, those fields should last longer than 5 years.
Yeah, I mean, typically, I mean, a well-maintained septic should get you 20 years, you know, at least, so.
But usually somebody pulls a permit, that's when the flag goes up and.
Right, and then with inspections, they would know, you know, when that septic has come to the end of its useful life, too, so.
Thank you.
Rob, your comments?
Well, I had an issue with C, existing homes and buildings as such. Municipal water becoming available in the existing. A joint connection shall be made such public systems within a period of time determined by the city council. If the connection is not made in this chapter, a penalty will be levied in an amount set forth by the ordinance. I disagree with the way that's written. I'm all for if a homeowner's on well and septic and city water and sewer goes by their property and their well fails, and they come to the city to pull the ordinance, they say, instead of spending thousands of dollars here, you must connect to the city. And there's some shared cost there, I'm assuming, because when city sewer and water goes through, there always is. Same thing for septic, you know, but this doesn't sound that way. It says as soon as it goes through, existing homes and buildings need to connect to the water or face penalty. So that's the only thing I really had an issue with, is we want to give this residents here options for connecting when Musa comes through their neighborhood of some sort, but not strong arming them into making that connection. When their systems fail, perfectly fine. And then I don't see any provisions in there where even if they want to connect, right, they say, you know what, I've had orange water for the last couple of 20 years and the city water comes through, it's much better. they connect their well, they want to use their other well, not for home use, but for sprinkler systems, a shed in the back, whatever. I don't see any provisions where they can keep that up in use as well. It says it needs to be closed, sealed by a professional, never to be used again. So to me, that's government taking away from private residences' abilities to do what their land they want to do. So those are the two issues I have with these changes.
Mayor Council, under section 3-4-9, that resident can keep that well if they choose to use it for irrigation. Obviously, it would have to be sealed in the event though that they're not going to be using it at all. So,
But that's by state guidelines, isn't it?
mhm.
That's not by city, that's state guidelines.
So, and by no means are we saying that you cannot use your existing well if you choose, when you connect to city water, you can use your existing well for irrigation purposes.
Right, but who's gonna go out, like this gentleman said, who's gonna go out there and I used 5 gallons, to fill up my water jug, whatever. What's the volume of water in a private well that they don't want to get sealed? Because to me, that's a selling point. That makes my land more valuable for irrigation and beautifying my lot. I may not irrigate as much as the next neighbor. See what I'm saying? But to say, hey, you know what, if you're deeming that not usable, and what's the amount, it needs to be sealed. And I just think that that's government overreaching its landowners' rights.
Mayor Council, with that too, one other thing that a citizen can do is apply for a maintenance permit, which essentially means that you are going to keep the well on site, not sealed. But in the event that I choose or want to use water going forward out of that said well, you can. So that is an option that they can do, is apply for that maintenance permit. The last thing that, we want are open, accessible wells. Obviously, the wells are closed, they're not like they used to be, but, as part of our wellhead protection plan, that's one of the things that we striving to accomplish, so.
And you don't want to contaminate it.
Right, correct.
And it also says in here, public system within a period of time is determined by the city council. So that time frame that we will, at that point in time when we get to that discussion, we'll decide, we can discuss the time frame to let people phase into city sewer water versus septic and well, or whatever. But once again, they are grandfathered in at that point. And again, wells are dictated by state.
Yes.
So you might have a little fight to go to the state and discuss some of those issues. So much.
Can I ask a question within Rob's question?
Yeah, please.
Is there a fee for a maintenance permit?
I don't know what that is off the top of my head. Councilmember Robbins.
But there is a fee, it's not just documentation, there's money involved.
I believe there is a fee, but I don't believe it's that significant of a fee. And I might be misspoken on that. I might be incorrect with that. There might not be a fee. I would assume there is, and that it's a state.
So Mayor and Council, with the wells as well, when a household hooks up to the city system, there are backflow preventers and pieces that are required by our building official to make sure in place. So at that point, we would want to make sure that that well is completely separate from our city water lines. And that's where they would either identify we're keeping it for one time a year, lawn irrigation, or fill a bucket one time a year versus abandoning it and throwing a cap on it and saying I'm never going to use it again. That's where the state really wants those sealed. I believe our well permit is either $20 or $50. And it's
That's
more,
reasonable.
yeah, and it's really for the purposes of just identifying where on the property that is. Most of those records are kept through the Department of Health as far as wells, but when some of these older ones come through, if they are hooking up or changing a well site, it's just a documentation so we know, where, if that house burns down or has to be torn down or something, we can identify working with the state where those wells are to protect our aquifers.
Right, and also like when you're buying or selling a piece of property, or buying a piece of property, you have to acknowledge of a wells on the property and any purchase agreement. And that's for that purpose too.
So this change in the ordinance, so I'm the homeowner, I connect, I lock the thing, I seal it, boom. I sell my property. Can the next homeowner open that up?
No, once the well is
I
sealed, the well
disagree with
is.
that. So, I don't know, maybe we need to continue this still.
But that's still state regulated.
Yeah, Mayor Council, once a well is sealed, that sealing record is sent to the state. And then that well is essentially abandoned, or it's no longer for use. So new homeowner, if they chose, they would have to put in a new well. And that's a state regulation, that's not a city.
That's out of our hands. They can't use that well, but they can dig another one. That's just the way.
That has nothing to do with us. We can't control that, no matter what.
Right, but we're forcing homeowners to either seal it or leave it open. And I think that's a little overreaching of.
Well, that's their choice, though.
Well,
That's their only choices.
We're really not
They
doing
can
that. What
leave it
we're
open.
doing is because expansion in the municipal service area, the water sewer area is expanding out. It gives them an option to connect the system, but at the same time, we have flexibility in it. As their grandfather then, when you come over to the school, we'll be putting a time frame on it. So that we give them, in other words, like what Kevin brought up in a 5-year period, most likely we'll go longer than that because wells do last 15, 20 plus years. So it's just a matter of what we decide, what we can attach to that, gives them their rights, at the same time protection of the public, and falls in with the state guidelines. Because the state's going to say, they want that, well, like I say again, the purchase agreements you see when you sell my property, like we just did, a recent property, that was on there to get acknowledged. And again, wells are, because of contamination purposes, now wells aren't like they used to be hundreds of years ago where they're open and exposed, but they still are water and they can contaminate the aquifer and go from there. So there's reasons those regulations in the state are there. That's why, we have to deal with it, but at the same time, for us, we're not forcing anybody to hook into a system. We're giving them an option if they want to go ahead of time. Let's say someone, where Kevin says like a new wells in place. What if there's a well, say, here's an example here, where music comes to their area and their well is old, and instead of spending thousands of dollars to do a well, they may just say, you know what, we don't want that orange water anymore. We're going to go to city water and sewer and take advantage of it. So there's two sides to everything here. It could be, we don't want to push anybody into it. We want to get flexibility, but at the same time, we want to make sure that they have the option to go with the system if they want to go with it. I understand some will, some won't. But when that time comes to discussion, we'll have to decide what is the proper time frame. Put that into effect. Anything else, Rob?
No, that's it.
Sarah?
I have nothing to add to it.
Any other comments you want to make?
No, not at this time, Mayor Council.
How does this fit along with other cities that have rural versus urban and expansion of their use?
So in looking what other cities were doing, it ran fairly similar for this. There were some timeframes and stuff that we already currently had in our code that were used, but for the most part, this runs really concurrent with what they.
All right, so let me ask you a question here. As what we're discussing here, what have other councils done as far as timeframes when music gets out to an area that's rural, as far as giving people that option or, timeframe as far as from rural?
I think that's going to depend on the council, really.
What have you seen?
Well, I've seen anywhere up to a year to make the connections, or depending upon how, if like, for instance, if the septic is failed, well, that's not necessarily a good thing, so we want to expedite that. Obviously, if somebody's well has failed and there's water available there, it's on their behalf to expedite that as well, so.
Okay, so, but once again, though, if the well's operational and the septic field's operational, they're grandfathered in.
Yeah.
Okay, and until that fails, then they have to come on the system. And then we can dictate whether that's within a year timeframe to a 5-year timeframe, whatever we decide at the time. Whoever sits in these chairs.
Are we talking like you have so many years past failure time? Or are we saying when music goes through?
Yeah.
You have, I don't care if you bought your septic system yesterday, when music goes through, you have a year to connect. See what I'm saying? There might be systems out there that have been running perfectly fine. They get inspected, they do their thing, right? All according to all of our city guidelines. They don't want to connect in 1, 5, 10 years. They'll want to connect when it fails. I think that's cost beneficial to a resident that has music that's already went by. They don't connect because their systems are running perfectly fine and they're keeping up with all the codes. When it fails, then we can step in and say, you can't get this permit to replace your septic. You need to connect to the city and you have X, Y, and Z time to do it. That's what I believe to be the proper thing to do. Not throwing in codes that once music goes by, you got 5 years based on this city council to connect. You know, it's a failure rate, I think, would be the proper way to.
Well, that discussion is, but that's an open discussion that we'll have to have at the time, because I understand what you're saying is that if they put in a new septic field as well, let's say 2 years or a year before we put use in it, and that system's working properly, should that be able to run until it can't be affected?
I think so.
And that's something we have to discuss in the council when that situation arises. Right now, that's not what this is talking about. It says here straight out, a direct connection shall be made by such a public system within a period of time as determined by the city council. We have to determine that time.
I have another question then. What if the well fails, but the septic's fine? Or vice versa? I've seen other municipalities where if they're digging both. What's allowing for that? Again, with the homeowner mind, the hardship and whether they got the money or not is immaterial. But usually if you're digging a trench, hey, it's just as easy to put them side by side, 4-inch next year, 1-inch copper.
Mayor Council, that is something that we actually have. There are, I believe, 1 or 2 situations like that in town, where the house actually has their own private well, but they are served by our sanitary system.
Okay.
So it's somewhat similar to that. Obviously, should the well fail, you know, connecting to the public water system, and then it would just be that time frame on the sanitary fail, or should it fail?
But going forward, will a customer have the same opportunity if their well fails, if they're on sewer or vice versa, going forward with these, with changing of this language or adding this verbiage?
What was it again?
Woods Mary Jones down on 123 Main Street, her well fails, but her septic is fine. With this new verbiage, is there still an avenue for her that, granted, she understands she's got to hook up to city water, but her sewer is still intact and working fine. She doesn't have to do both at the same time. That's what I'm saying. I've seen other municipalities where they go, if we're digging both. You don't have a choice, so they're then burdened with tens of thousands of dollars.
Yeah, so, you know, honestly, in a situation like that, I mean, I could actually see that citizen actually just saying, I'm gonna hook up to both. I mean, that's possible as well. You know, because obviously if they have a contractor there to do the water connection, it would only make sense at that time then to do the sanitary, even though the septic hasn't failed yet. Now, who's to say that septic doesn't fail within 2 to 3 years after doing that? And then they would have to go back and dig it up again, so.
But that should be their choice.
It is, yeah.
Okay,
That should be their choice.
and that's all I'm asking, if the customer gets a choice.
We all understand that septic and well is expensive. So we don't want somebody to end up throwing out a lot of money and only get it for a year and have to hook up to city sewer water. So it's up to council, whoever sits in these seats at the time, to dictate, to look at the situation, what's most optional, most fair to the resident. You know, and not forcing anyone to do anything, but what gives them the option to, like I say, some people may be just fed up with wells, fed up, or at a time where they're in the 19th year of the 20-year system that's ready to fail, and this might be their way out. Or, you know, but like I say, really what it comes down to is this way is helping the resident have an option to go to a system and get out of a failed system to a new system. And that once they're on that, you know, once that's failed system down the road, let's say 10 years down the road, it's a failed system, they can't go digging more septic a well. They have to stay on the city's soil. I guess we're gonna have to really look at it in depth and see at the time when that comes there. You said it's not at that point yet, it's under discussion to get there, but you said it's gonna expand. That's a fact. So how to be fair and give flexibility at the same time, and be fair and give the options to the public and not be forceful, but at the same time, be right by the city at large is important. So we'll have to check out.
Thank you.
Sarah, your comments, Sharon?
No, I still, I'm good. I think it looks
Mr. Mayor, I got one more thing then. Means this is the first reading, right?
Right.
Is it possible in C, to take some latitude in that language? And put a failing system or something like that? Because the way I read this, to me, there is no latitude. A direct connection shall be made to such public system within a period of time as determined by the city council. So there's no latitude for a failing system or, I'm all for increasing that timeline if a system fails when use is available. We don't want to have our residents polluting the bigger picture per se. But I just don't like the language how C is written at this time. And I don't want to poo-poo it or continue it until there's enough votes to leave C the way it is. We
Yeah, but the
can.
cart is not before the ox yet, because we have a new citizen there, and it gives the flexibility, gives it to the council to determine the time frame. And when that time frame is set, then a penalty would go into place. So, like I say, again, example would be if someone 2 years before this comes into effect, puts in a septic field and wants to get like 15, 20 years out of the hopes or whatever, they're still grandfathered in. There's nothing there that nothing changes, correct? Parish, nothing changes, they're grandfathered in. But during that time of that 15 to 20 years, that well or septic field fails, then they're out, then they can have the system and not have to pay for a new system on there. So it's basically what it's saying is eventually MUSA is here, and eventually you're gonna have to be on the system eventually. When that eventually happens, it's up to the people sitting in these seats to find out what the best fair time frame is. Does that make sense?
Yep.
Mayor, council, we could update that language also between readings 1 and 2. if that would-
I don't know how much else you can do it. So, public system with a period of time is determined by the city council. If such connection is not made pursuant to this chapter, a penalty shall be levied, based on the time frame people sitting in these chairs will calculate. Right? Whether that be 2 years, 5 years, 10, 15 years. But right now, we're not even at that time discussing it. So, legal, tell me something.
I think, Steve, I think you're right. It's hard, it's impossible for this council to predict the circumstances of the future council. So this gives it the most latitude for either a future city council to get 50 years or 5 days, right? I mean, it leaves it open-ended because it's hard for any one of us to predict what's gonna happen. You'd like to think that any future council is gonna be reasonable and go with kind of what you're saying. It just kind of depends on what the factors are and who's sitting in the seats, but this is the most latitude you're gonna be able to get.
Okay. It's almost like generic at this point.
Right.
Dave, any comments from you?
No, that's correct. It gives the council at the time the ability to hear from either the property owner or the resident, hear the facts and circumstances in regard to what their situation is, and then to make a decision.
Right, yeah, the whole idea, bottom line is, we're not forcing people to go to MUSA, but eventually MUSA will expand, and there will be some situations where septic well will fail, and they're letting them continue to do septic well when city stormwater there, they should have the option to connect to it and be fair and flexible at the same time. And that's what the discussion will be about when that time comes. Which, we don't know, we're in discussion now, and it will be a long discussion, so, any other comments from council? Nope. Any other comments from staff? No. Okay. So then, do I have a motion to adopt ordinance 294, amending chapter 3 city code first reading? Do I have a motion?
I'll make that.
Okay. How about Sarah? Councilmember Hendricks makes it first, Councilman Robinson makes a second, and we'll go to a roll call on this, Jen.
Councilmembers Robinson,
Aye.
Bauer,
Aye.
Ludwig, Mayor Bowman.
Aye. Okay, thank you, Parrish. Any other suggestions or ideas you have before a second reading, of course, bring it to our attention. Okay. Being open to public second time, can anyone at all? No. All right, reports, public works, you have a couple of reports.
I do. Mayor and council, I'm happy to present the water and sewer and streets and parks monthly reports for December. on the water and wastewater side, I don't know if you remember, about 6 months ago, we started our AWIA, or American Water Infrastructure Act plan. There are 2 separate categories within that plan: risk and resilience and emergency response plan. Those had to be into the EPA by December 31st, and that has been met. So we are good with that now for the next 5 years. Well 1 was removed. We're still waiting for that. That's about 2 to 3 weeks out yet. They did find a few other issues with it that were, I wouldn't say unforeseen, but nothing that can't be repaired. So as far as the water and the wastewater side, both facilities continue to operate well. And I remember, if you remember at the last council meeting, I said that we were turning to about 96% water concord. We didn't meet that for December, so we hit our 96% water concord mark. So that was good. Also on the streets and parks side.
Explain that to us.
Yes.
What are you saying?
So the water that comes out of the ground versus what the water was sold. So that gap has shrunk from.
Okay, so 10 gallons come out, 10 gallons gets used, no.
Yes, yeah, exactly.
We're close.
Yep, so,
Have we always been close or not?
not that close. That's pretty good. You know, I mean, AWWA, Minnesota Department of Health, the DNR, they hope that some cities are within 10%. We're at 3% difference. So,
Very good.
yeah.
Very good.
And help the radio reads certainly help because we can track that real time. Obviously on the streets and parks side, December, winter got here. I think we've had 4 full staff law events, not to mention the guys out sanding, salting the roads. They're busy the last 4 or 5 days they haven't been, but getting the rink maintained. Obviously with the cooler temps coming back this week here, they'll be back out again. So, and with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions you guys have.
Okay, am I right here? I know, you just, on this part here, there's no lift station, anything here on this report here? Wow.
Yeah, look at that.
I've only-
We're saving money.
I think this has only happened twice in 5 years. that I realized. No, wow. And then, meter rereads are really low, so that's good. The system seems to be working, the new meters seems to be working.
Mayor Council, you know, I do have it still worded as reread, but I would like to say that it's not necessarily a reread what once was. It's essentially if there was maintenance under the side of the house and that MIU was removed, we just have to go back and reinstall
But
it.
that's on the 13.
Yeah,
But I'm talking about the 2 reread meters. That's only 2.
yeah,
And so what it tells me is our 2 meters are actually doing what we wanted them to do.
absolutely.
It was a little bit of a hardship in the beginning, but it's panned out to what we hoped it would be, which is good. Very good. All right, thank you. Kevin, comments?
No, other than the plowing's been really good. At 2:30 in the morning, I've been up wandering around. I see the yellow lights flashing. You guys are rolling, so it's, no complaints. I think the citizens are happy. You guys are doing a good job. So,
Thank you.
a really good job. So thank you.
Yeah, I just want to comment also with the 2 big trucks that we have, plus the front end loader, now the greater retrofit that we did. Now we have some really good machines out there doing the job. That's good. And some other changes that you guys did on the flappers and stuff that all came up with some suggestions.
Yeah, there's been some ingenuity within the staff, doing some work and, you know, I mean, obviously in between snows and stuff like that, it gives the guys time to think about what would work better on a certain piece of equipment. So,
And kudos to your staff doing that. I mean, they take the initiative on it and they do it.
there's a lot of ingenuity there. So.
For sure. Not Mickey Mouse.
No.
Robert, comments?
Great report. I just want to clarify on the two rereads. Would that be like a homeowner saying, hey, my water bill's too high, can you look at my meter and see?
It can, I guess in these 2 here, you know, even though we do have the 2 data collectors, there are, I think, it just depends on if they were captured or not. So what will happen is if that meter hasn't been read by our data collectors, we'll actually have to go out and read it. Or it also can be, you know, that a homeowner was doing work on the exterior side of their house, you know, the wire got severed, you got thrown away or whatever, so,
Okay.
yeah.
Darcy, any comments on that?
That's
Is that right?
basically been the problems is like everybody who's been taken off to do something and we can't. do it.
Gotcha.
We-
Thank you.
Sarah?
Excellent.
All right, Darcy, you're on to streets and parks. Or you want to, that was all?
No, that was all, I just, yeah, I went all in on it.
Just flew right
Yeah.
out.
Yeah,
Okay, okay. The last one kind of went a little longer than each one. So, the last one.
I can certainly repeat it if you.
No, that's that's more the final stuff. Okay, let's see, okay, now let's move on to, fire department.
Mayor and council, for your review tonight is the December monthly comparison report from the fire department. For the month of December, we continue to meet our goal of a response time of less than 10 minutes at 9 minutes and 47 seconds. And December was quite a busy month again with 68 runs, which is tied for our second busiest month of the year behind August. So our run volume continues to remain at a high level. Our staffing was down a little bit in December with 5 firefighters average per response. That's directly attributed to the pandemic that we're currently in, and certainly rotating staff in and out these days at a rate that we haven't seen for quite a while. Our fire and EMS distribution continues to float right at that 73% EMS runs, 27% fire runs. Our variance usage for December remains pretty stable. Of note, we did flag another 9 runs for COVID-19 criteria and seven runs from the ambulance of over 20 minutes. And again, they're experiencing the same employee shortages that we're experiencing. So that seems to be on par with what we're seeing locally. And fire inspections, we did 5 initial fire inspections, one of those being Northrop Grumman in December, and 1 re-inspection for a total of 6 visits this month in December. With that, I'm happy to answer any questions you may have.
Well, very important, yeah, I see that, COVID-9. And that, I wish that was better. And then as far as, again, I'm always, the EMS is unbelievable. And I say this on record before, and I'll say it again. If you were gonna have a heart attack, this is the city to have a heart attack in. Because the chances of you being saved or getting to that hospital with this public safety people we have in treasure, believe me, you're in good hands. Not all state good hands with St. Francis. I mean that's sincerely, not joking. I mean, that you prove that out there in the summertime with that one individual on the golf course, but I feel so confident, so good that EMS ability is here in the city, and both departments are doing excellent.
The interagency
I hope everybody
cooperation is
understands that
incredible.
what you've done here, both departments have done. And when you make that call, you have some people that can actually handle the situation before that ambulance gets here. That's a big deal, huge. So thank you for that. Sarah, your comments?
It's excellent report and unfortunately, yeah, staffing problems everywhere. And I hope that that picks up for you because that's a burden. Especially when we're doing mutual aid, it seems like we're getting called out a lot for that. And so hopefully those numbers can pick up, but otherwise, it's an excellent report. Like to see the fire inspections, it's great. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Kevin, your comments?
Yeah, a little old new, the fire truck from a couple years ago that had gremlins in there, like, what issues, have you had any issues in the last year or so?
We had 1 issue this year, and we found that we had a bad turbo actuator that they came and replaced this year. We haven't had the same issue where it was resulting in going into limp mode. Late this fall, about mid-October, we started seeing a check engine light that would come on, go off, come on, go off, come on, go off. We had a new company come out, Fire Safety USA came out, and they actually diagnosed it as a turbo actuator, which a little bit of a delay getting the parts, we'll figure this time. But they
Warranty
did
or
get
not warranty?
This was not warranty. They did get the turbo actuator replaced, and we've had 0 issues with that vehicle.
Was there a harness problem or wiring or shutdown problem?
So there was a couple things that they worked through with that limp mode issue. They went through, I believe, 4 or 5 computer updates, and then it resulted in a wiring harness into one of the modules that was creating an overload to our Q siren. And once they figured out that it was an overload that was shorting things out, that was putting it into limp mode, they were able to reconcile the issue.
So it's isolated, repaired, and you haven't had any issues, and it hasn't caused any service issues.
Correct.
That's a good thing, thank you, good. And then the fire truck that's coming, the commissioning of that, when is that coming down the road?
We have a request into the manufacturer right now. We'd like to send 2 people down, hopefully either by the end of January or beginning of February for a mid-construction inspection. We're anticipating delivery to be somewhere between March and April, depending on the flow of making sure they have all the necessary components put on the vehicle. So we'll get out there and get our eyes on it, kind of in this mid-construction phase, which is covered as part of the cost for the vehicle. Just so we can make sure that's being built in the way and the specs that we have set forth with the vehicle. And again, we're hoping without any delays, March, April timeline for final inspection and delivery.
And it's being contracted where again?
Ocala, Florida.
What a tough gig for the 2 people that have to go.
It won't be me, so not on this one anyway.
All right, no, thank you very much. Can you give us an update on Nowden? How's it going with those guys?
Now that's going well. We brought on 3 firefighters in December, which certainly helped stabilize a little bit of their staffing. We're experiencing the same issue over there that essentially every fire department in the county is right now, with people having to quarantine or being out for a period of time. So that couldn't have come soon enough. We're starting into 2022, so we're hiring an assistant chief from within the station over there to help offset some of the burden on myself and Assistant Chief Lawrence. We're going to start working towards a municipal well, getting them established in the SDF pension program. So we got a number of initiatives going on over there right now as well.
All right, and then lastly, inside your fire station, like 2 years ago plus, physical fitness and an area, a personal area, workout area, whatnot. I saw some expenses over the last couple of months. Have you gotten that squared away the way you want it? And is it beneficial? People are.
None of the fitness expenditures have been from the fire department. Everything that we have up in our mezzanine area for exercise equipment has been mostly donated. But we haven't purchased anything new up there for quite some time.
Do you have any foreseeable expenses coming?
I don't think so. I don't think so. I think we're pretty solid up there. We have a pretty good cache of free weights, treadmill, elliptical. There's a free weight bag up there. We have probably 6 or 7 folks that use it pretty regularly. But I don't see us enhancing that like anytime in the near
But
future.
it's not making new, but you've got it to where you want it. Anyway,
Yes,
you
sir.
guys have the opportunity to use it, you know.
Yes, sir.
And then mechanically, is there anything that we should be aware of as far as, I know the mayor worked on the leveling of the floor a while back, and is there anything, we know what the future probably holds for the city, but anything currently that's a deficiency that needs to be addressed that you haven't really mentioned of?
I don't know that there's anything that we would have an immediate need to reconcile over there currently. I think where we're at right now is waiting to see where this process goes before we address investing a whole lot more money into the facility itself. The roof leaks seem to have stopped. The floor in the east bay got leveled and recoated. Certainly we have just ongoing things that pop up, but nothing to the level that we've experienced over the past, at least in my tenure here. Which is good, but we're still obviously an aging depleted facility.
And you're seeing less frost and whatnot in the building this year?
Correct.
The repair. And so that means we might be saving money on heat as well.
We are
You guys will be
absolutely saving
comfortable with
money
that.
on heat. I can promise you that. Our gas bills are a little bit down than what we were paying.
Great. Thank you very much. I appreciate it. Thank you, Mayor.
Dave, great report. Any annotation on the 7 over 20 minutes for the ambulance to arrive? Do you know how many of those took a ride?
As far as acuity or transport.
Transport, you know, the ambulance took 20 minutes to get there. How many of those actually took the patient?
I don't have the specific runs in front of me. My assumption would be that a very high percentage of those are actually transport.
Okay. Which, you know, not on the department or, you know, emergency services, it's just frustrating for ambulatory,
Yep.
you know, services here in St. Francis. we can get there, but if they still need to go, we have a substantial problem with getting an ambulance to St. Francis.
And
And I've
it's-
seen that number kind of growing.
And to be fair, it's not just a St. Francis problem, when we've talked
Right.
about that at past council meetings, this really is not only a county problem, a state problem, but also a national problem. The number of challenges that EMS is facing and has faced over the last couple of years are starting to really come home. They're really being exposed by the environment that we're in today. And it's getting multiplied, unfortunately, in ways that are completely outside of our control, which is the frustrating part for myself, the department, the council, I'm sure. But we're also very acutely aware that we're experiencing the same employee problems, and I should say shortages with the pandemic that's ongoing. They're not immune to that either. So we do have some grace in our perspective on how we look at this. But because we have seen this pattern grow exponentially over the last year is why we decided to start tracking these. There are things that we're exploring as far as tracking. If it's an over 20 response time and it's an emergent transport to the hospital, that might be some helpful data for us to capture as well. Because that could show the level of acuity on some of these patients. We're trying to figure out how that makes sense and how we can track that easily. But that might be the next layer that we try to work in 2022.
Right, so we can tell the emergency services ambulatory,
Correct.
you know, how can we make changes and how can we make it better to bring their times down, just like we do, you know, less than 10 minutes of response time. And I agree with you 100%. That's kind of where I was going with over 20-minute, just giving data to every department, not just our city. I think we're doing a great job, you know, emergency services wise. But if we can't get out of St. Francis, we're doing our residents a disservice as well, not us particularly, but, you know, residents out there, if they want to, you know, join the emergency services field per se, there's a need. So
There is a need. And hopefully, if nothing else, this provides an opportunity for new partnerships that maybe haven't existed in this part of the country before too.
Yep.
We're looking at this from a really holistic approach, and where are the gaps, where are the shortcomings, how can we help be a part of the solution?
thank you.
Because obviously there's not enough ambulances and not enough static manning those ambulances for the problem, because we're seeing 50 calls on EMS to 18 on fire, and that's going up. So we just, you know, I mean, you know, it's understaffed, under vehicle and under man, whatever you want to call it.
Overutilized.
It's a trend nationwide, like you're talking about. That's why it's so important to have EMS services, having that person stay alive until an ambulance gets there. Otherwise, it's truly a matter of life and death. So, wow, it's a hard situation. Okay, it always comes down to dollars and cents, always. Sadly, the truth. I had a heart attack in 07, and ambulance got me to the hospital. That was good. Not this thing. Sorry. All right, moving on to, I think you did. Moving on to community development. Kate?
Yes, Mayor and Council, before you tonight is the annual department report for community development. I will walk through the report just to highlight a few items, and I'll start with the economic development. The projects in economic development, we've had several active projects this last year with many hours of technical assistance. Developers that we're working with include not only the senior housing project, some industrial expansion, and a coffee shop, in which brings in our businesses and our retail for job creation. We've got the Bridge Street property where we're looking at, the staff to continue really the planning, the RFPs, several conversations going with potential developers. So each of our commercial properties has had or is in the middle of conversations, and we continue to provide the assistance for those. With the initiatives and marketing, we've included a lot of direct outreach. We've posted the city properties for sale, and then also highlighted properties and showcasing them in a panel at city events. The broadband and internet issues that both the east and west side of the city are battling. This is a very time-extensive project, probably more so than I even anticipated. This project is very dependent on that future growth. The providers are looking for those continued growth patterns, continued development patterns to get that broadband and internet service in here. Staff continues the conversations to really keep this moving forward. We have 3 major utility and street expansion projects that are going because of this growth. Each of these projects has a high impact to the future, really ties into the codes that parish is working on. The impact right now is not only to our future, but also a lot of current projects and possible developments that staff is working with and in discussion with for continued and new development. Highway 47 redesign, I touched base on that. We are moving forward. We're stepping towards focus groups and really getting those concepts to review the safety and traffic movement. The EDA only met once this past year, and it was to acquire the 4 properties along Bridge Street where we anticipate a possible city campus. The St. Francis Forward staff continues to use this guide to develop the city plan and, uses that as our guide to work with these developers as we're looking at all of the properties, both within our Highway 47 and our Bridge Street corridor. Within our housing continues to be strong. Projects include not only our infill project on Bridge Street, we've had a lot of conversations with both multifamily apartments and some townhouse developers. We're working on that street expansion with that. The Green Valley second has a possibility of 14 new homes. The Meadows completed 16 new homes. Meadows fourth, that one is really temporarily on hold, and we don't see that one moving forward real fast. River's Edge created an additional 45 lots. And then the Turtle Ponds projects, both the 5th and the 4th, are looking to start their expansion and break ground this spring, along with possible additional property to the west of those properties. So that is a project that is growing. Platinum Properties, we had reviewed the concept plan, getting to the preliminary plat stages before June or July is their plan. And they are, creating those with the direction provided by council, and includes both the single family villas and apartment for an anticipated 294 units. It's been a busy year. Then we continue to see several smaller minor subdivisions. So with the rezoning changes, we had some of our properties as our MUSA moves east and west that fell into rural residential zoning districts, and a lot of those individuals are calling in regards to splitting their lots to either 5 acres or 2.5 acre lots. So it's generated a lot of conversations with people that have the 10 acres, 10 acre, 15 acres, and what they can do with really breaking off a chunk. Where is that right of way? Where is that road access? So we're fielding a lot of those calls. With the initiatives and marketing, because of those residents who are interested in splitting and these large projects, we've really had more developers calling in on land, on how it can be developed versus us having to actually start calling developers, asking them to come develop in the last 6 to 12 months. Our city is really seen as the next kind of leap to really put a lot of these developments in place. The Planning Commission met 11 times in 2021, which is the most since I've been in the city, with several difficult and very complicated projects on their plate, including that zoning map and several ordinances and all of these developments, concept plans. After that, I've got the building department. The department revenue or permit revenue for building was down a little bit this year. We have seen a decrease in some of our permits. So permit revenue by type, we break down where permit revenues fall, including the WAC and SAC, which always is really more of where those revenues go than our permits and our site plans and inspections. After revenue by type, I touch on the value of the improvements. New construction and commercial projects are always going to have a higher general value because of the cost to get those in place. However, just the general residential is just as important because it really is sustaining what we have and keeping, that maintenance in good condition of what is here. The next page, I touch on the permits total by year. We are down 61 permits overall by last year. We did not have the same number of small permits. We had a lot of decks, roofs, fences last year, which we kind of attributed to all that stimulus money that was coming out. We could kind of watch our permits follow that trend. And then with new residential construction, we are down 14 from last year. Builders are working very hard with labor and supply issues to continue to build, and we continue to see new permits coming in. The one thing I added to this year was the actual building trends. Added this basically for the perspective that we we've all watched where this market went really high and then it crashed, and now we're coming back. And it is very inflated right now, and kind of how those historical permit trends. So these are, so these numbers are showing you the new construction permits all the way back from 1993 to the current. So in their peak year of 206 new homes, all the way down to the 2 low years where they only had 4. And now we're slow, you know, that trend is a little bit slower right now, but definitely not making that same jump up as they did even back in 2002. On the next page, I touched on the trend in housing costs. So this is kind of interesting because you can really see the value range of what is being built in St. Francis, from our lowest value permit of a new construction to the highest. There really, it's kind of the higher value the highest value new construction homes are what we're seeing going into the rural residential subdivisions. So these kind of pockets or PUDs, Smith Lake on the east side, some of those are where we're seeing the higher value permits come in for our new construction. And then our lowest value, you know, those are a lot of times your townhouse and some of your other smaller kind of villas. Code enforcement, to give you an idea on the time being spent towards code enforcement, here's an annual comparison. You know, in 2020, we really thought people being home on COVID was part of the issue, why our numbers jumped so significantly. 2021, we're really just finding that people are not interested in living next to cluttered neighbors. A lot of what we're getting is just people are tolerating less in their neighborhood, they're tolerating less next door, and we're getting more calls on junk and debris, cars, dogs, dog feces, long grass. I mean, it's the full gamut of I think people are just kind of, I want it fixed. So our numbers continue to go up with that. We have several code updates that took place in 2021, including the very large task of our zoning map. Codes updated included the licensing, the peddler storage, so we've got that bulleted. As those code changes come through, staff must update all of the handouts, applications, the website. So some of that is still in process. We're working through that. Administrative projects, we have several other large projects moving through, which include our park plan. So getting your homework in so we can keep that moving. We will continue to organize that and get that to council for both funding and future planning. The rental housing license, you did the first round of approvals tonight. Our septic properties, we have 771 properties in the city that staff is trying to keep track of septic systems on. So as we continue this growth of all these new subdivisions in the rural area, that just kind of adds to that as well. So then I final with the Sywood Park, bids are to come in next week, so we'll have that to council in the next few weeks. Our vacant property registration, we're only at 4 vacant properties that we have on the register, which is very good. That is where you want to see numbers like that. And our website and our development and application is ongoing with every code or policy we try to get in there in addition to legislation changes. I know I burned through all of that very quickly, but I'm happy to answer any questions on anything specific.
Okay, well, I tell you what, I want to just go back here. You know, one of the issues that I really see is something here, and I you know, in a free market like it is, but CenturyLink has not really been helpful to the broadband. When we gather in past discussions, and Nico's been more receptive. You know, what I wish would happen is these developments go in. I almost wish it was mandated that they have to put that service in, because in today's world, I can't see not having internet in some form, and a slow internet, especially as I see the trend going from the pandemic now. It seems like more people are going to be working from home more long term. It doesn't seem like it's going to go backwards. It's going to probably go stay back, come out, or go forward. And so to me, I don't understand why these companies are so hesitant to do it, because it's only money in their pockets. I mean, like I've always said, you know, after I build a house and I put a meter on it for gas and electric, no matter how many times that house turns over with new ownership, they're still giving money to an electric company and a gas company. It's forever. It's a cash register, jing, 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 for the life of that house. Owner may stay there 5 years, but that house can be there for 20 years, and they're making money. So I don't understand why they're so hesitant to want to put, you know, on a development, you know, put it in there. I have been told by developers that they have to to get them in, they have to pretty much guarantee a certain amount of hookup. And if they don't do it, then they have to get on the van board out of pocket themselves. But it just seems to me as, you know, again, with the trends changing from going, you know, community to work to staying home work, internet's becoming more, I don't see computers going away out of this. And I see internet being vital, you know, important. I just don't understand why they won't pick up on that. So, and I know that again, the CenturyLink is not as workable as Midco is. But then, you know, I just wish there was, you know, 2 cables and 2 satellites and more competitive, which is what capitalism is all about. And then interesting fact that you told me, which I see here on housing, although the price range with the highest growth was in home selling at over $1 million, 41% increase, you said to me something to that effect? In homes, was that right? Or was I wrong?
46, I think it was 46%. So
Increase in $1 million.
in $1 million plus home sales, correct,
That's
from last.
inflation, economy, it just boggles my mind, you know? Yet the price range that tend to sell the quickest was a 250, 350. I mean, like I say, I don't know how these people are doing it, but more power to them. Whatever, and then, you know, Sarah had brought something to my attention before the meeting, okay, and this may be just something we want to discuss even after all comments from council, all this. But code compliance, okay, and I saw it in here from 2017 to 2021, and we started putting into effect our code compliance with Jody, you know, handling that with Lyle. Was that in 2019 we did that, or was that earlier than that? I think that was
I would have to say like 2020.
20. I think it was
19.
I think it was 19. Okay, but you know, what I want to say to people is because Sarah's going to bring up a concern here, and I'll let her take it on that one. But once again, on everyone in the city, you need to stop going on Facebook to get information on what the city thinks or does. The best thing you can do is call the city, call Jody, call you, whatever. But I'm saying to you that it just seems to me as once again, people go on there for misinformation and tend to believe everything on Facebook and Twitter and TikTok and all this other formats, whatever. The best place to call is 763-235-2300 or 2630, whichever it may be, and ask some questions from us. And then you'll find out which way to go. So I'm gonna tell you that it's a good report here. I'm gonna turn this over to Sarah so she can tell you what she thinks. We changed code compliance and 19 by putting Jody in charge with Lyle Burns. We've done good there, but we still get people that complain on the social media networks. That's not helping us to help them. So, sir,
Yeah, I don't engage in the social media complaints of our city because it does zero good. And you waste everybody's time, but, I've actually had people reach out to me and I do direct them to call because of course they're like, well, what do they want me to do in the winter time? And I'm like, they want you to be aware that there's an issue so that you can make plans for when it gets nice out, that you're gonna take care of this. Communication. And then of course, you know, they're saying that, you know, and I guess this is where my clarification comes in. I think it is more neighbors calling on neighbors than it is our actual full compliance officer driving around doing this or calling Jody and saying, hey, I'm at this property, now I'm at this property, now I'm at this. I don't see that happening. I truly believe that it's neighbors that are tired of looking at other people's junk. And again, we've said it up here before. Yes, you've gotten away with it for a long time. But just like anything else, eventually your free ride is going to go away and you're going to have to come catch up. And if you call the city and work with the city, you're going to avoid that fine. You're going to avoid all that. But if all you're going to do is go on Facebook and complain about it, you're going to end up with a fine because you didn't do anything about it. It's very, very simple. We have very good staff who are more than willing to help. You know, you can, if it's too hard for you to call them, email them. But then when they call you back, answer your phone. It's simple. And, you know, it's okay. It's okay for your neighbors to say that they don't like seeing all of your stuff stored in back of your yard. They have to look at it, and it is part of St. Francis ordinances. And when you move here, or no matter how long you've been here, it is on you to know what those ordinances are. So your realtor isn't gonna tell you, nobody's gonna come out and sit down with you and go through every ordinance in St. Francis. You need to know what they are when you move here, or check every once in a while to see. Sign up for a new muni code. I get those emails, and I'm on council, but it's a good way to keep track. So don't just think that it's our code compliance officer that drives around for 8 hours a day and just marks you up, because it's not. It is 90, I would say probably 90% of neighbors being tired of seeing other people sit up. So please call City Hall. They will help you. They do not expect you to put down glass 5 or cement or pavers in the middle of winter. They're just telling you if there's an issue, contact us, give us your plan, and we can go from there.
Thank you, sir. So, hey, I'm, you know, because I believe she's right here, as far as I know since we started this, Lyle, one of the things he does mostly is inform people of what the codes are, and let them, and then give them time to remediate the situation, which is the right way to go. We're not out here to fine people. We don't make money in the city by fines. That we make it by revenue through tax dollars and development. That's how we do it. I said that on more than one occasion. But of course, people go on there and misinform people, and right away it's the city's fault. Okay, so I do understand, you know, with the number of audience we're bringing into our development, to our growth, people care about their properties. And when they have to look at an eyesore next to them, I know I would do the same thing. I mean, I take care of my property, and then have someone else who doesn't cut their lawn, or has weeds and storage of this, and I mean, I see no grow all the time, so that's nothing new to me. Okay, they're living across the street from a grow. But my point is if someone were to call you today, okay, and call you, and with a situation that was brought to their attention, and it was winter, something that couldn't be done in wintertime, what's your response to them?
So Mayor and Council, we work with everybody. And if they get a letter in the winter and they need more time, there is a process. Code outlines the process. I have brought to you in the past extensions that have requested to go into the spring. So we're willing to work with anybody. Some of the recent ones received letters before there was snow on the ground. So I just caution anything you're seeing on social media that there is an entirely different story on the other side of some of these. And we ask, as well as you have questions, please give us a call and we can let you know what is going on our side. Every resident that gets a letter gets a pamphlet. That is their ability to apply for immediate extension. So they open their letter, they can fill out the extension, and they're entitled to up, or not entitled, I use that word loosely. They are eligible for up to a 30-day based on kind of what their situation is right off the bat. So at that point, if it was something weather related, illness related, they would have the ability to have an extension. The one thing with these numbers being as high as they are isn't due to that. You know, Lyle has brought in a few more, but at the same time, he's having to work with, you know, short staffing issues. So even though he's been working with community development the last 2 years, it hasn't been all 12 months of the last 2 years. So, you know, as he's filling in those other positions, he's not out there doing the code enforcement. We probably have 3 neighbors right now who bring us a list of about 10 to 15 properties every time they come into City Hall. They're just tired of looking at it. They're tired of driving by it. And it really is residents bringing us these complaints, these lists, these phone calls, because they're just tired of it. So.
And they care about their property. And let me just say this on record here. Council and staff did not put this into effect to get money and rape the public. We did this so that we could keep a check and balance and make the neighborhoods comfortable and and responsible with the neighbors and everybody involved. We didn't do this to create revenue. I've heard this from people that I created this, that the council created this. We didn't do that. What we did was put a situation together with Jody in charge, with Lyle backing her up, and let people be informed of what the codes are so they can remediate the situation and not be fined. If you're not working with us, then it's your problem, it's your fault that you're getting fines. You call us and work with us, and not on Facebook, not on TikTok, not on Twitter, and work with us, and we'll show you how flexibility and working with us can work for you as well as us. We serve you, the public, but when you don't come to us to help you out, we hear through a third party. I hear things from other people that I created this mess and blah, blah. I didn't create this mess to punish anybody. I created this mess to have a situation where we can remediate the situation quicker without finding people. And this council has been more than flexible on extensions more than once. So all I can say to people is, and I hope you hear this, call the city. If you have a problem, discuss it with the right people, Jody, Kate, or anybody, or council member, whatever may take it, or you to be comfortable with, but discuss it with us, because going on Facebook will get you nowhere. And I can't emphasize that enough, because it frustrates me that, I've said this before in newsletters, I've said this before at council meetings, we can't address an issue unless you bring it to our attention. We don't read minds. We don't drive around the city looking for problems. We have enough on our plate without doing that. So what we do is here, we try to find solutions to problems. And I would just suggest to the public is that if you have a problem, bring it to us and hopefully have a direction to a solution or a solution to the problem, so we can help us help you better, because we are a customer service business and you're our customers. But I just get so frustrated with this Facebook and misinformation all the time. You're blaming us for things that you're not going to give us a chance to solve, because we're already at fault before you even know what the issue is, which doesn't make sense to me at all. All right, I hope we got that on time saver with it. Anyway, moving on here. Kevin, you have any comments on this?
Sure, just to dovetail with Sarah's, usually it's 5% of the people, the ones who are in trouble are the offenders, and they're acting like victims. And then the victims are actually the 95%, and they're doing what they're supposed to be doing, and they're, like I say, they have pride in their neighborhood, etc. So it's probably way less than 5% when you think of all the people that we have in our population. So I have no sympathy for the offenders. I do have a question. Does the city ever ask the city on a complaint? There's a property out to the west, to the east of us, and it belongs in a city that won't go named. But again, it's a, and I guess we can't say too much. We let the gentleman on the west side of town have a salvage area there, and we talked to him about making it a little more presentable and whatnot. So first impressions are forever. But does the city ever ask the city about something that looks like hell on the other end, on the bordering city?
So to clarify, to call another city and ask them to address their own.
Right.
haven't-
Distance that looks like, because I know it's a complaint-based city,
Right.
but
I haven't done that yet. And if we have a neighboring resident, we encourage them to call the city in which the property is in. But, I mean, that is something we have, I guess I haven't yet.
I'll approach you later.
Okay.
We'll touch. Otherwise, the mayor brought up CenturyLink, again, still no participation by them, or it's not really worth pursuing, because I know the bureaucracy, the layers are so thick, they don't call you back, but still no participation or even.
So I have had one meeting with the CenturyLink team. I got 8 of them on one call, and they
Wow.
promised me some mapping and some quotes and some data, which we're going to need 2 quotes in order to get any of these grants or be considered for any funding. They were going to get it to me by the end of December, and I have yet to see it. So it was a first step. I got them on the phone. They heard what I needed. I heard what they wanted. They were going to get some stuff in writing, but I have yet to see that package. So
We have secured, that was an accounting grant that we matched to help with what's gonna take place with Midco, correct? That was secured, or?
no, so the county is also looking for multiple bids. Because it's federal funding, we have to follow federal procurement requirements. So the county is looking for us to get 2 quotes on what we're doing as well. I've shared my concerns in regards to getting those 2 quotes, and I'm not the only city that is really expressing concern with CenturyLink right now. They're difficult in all of the cities on the north suburbs here, so we're kind of coming at this at a uniform pace. We're working with Anoka County closely to try to get them to help us as well. So with that, we're hoping to get that piece from CenturyLink. I have everything I need from Midcoat. I need the documentation and writing from CenturyLink. So I've got to follow up with them.
So it's idle right now, what we spoke about in spring and early summer is sitting idle because we need 2 bids.
Correct.
Wow. Okay, because I saw some activity, Midco truck activity after one or several of our meetings, and I'm like, oh, good, the wheels are in motion, things are cooking, but obviously they're not.
So because of the increased development, we were able, or I guess we weren't able, but Midco chose to do their expansion on the east side of the city because they saw enough growth that had happened over the past few years that they were unaware of. So they initiated their own. They have recognized 2 areas of the west side, which they have identified as projects. It's looking for that public-private partnership where we would need the city funds and the county funds. So getting CenturyLink caught up with those areas and trying to get apples to apples has been a challenge. But the growth helps because it gets their attention. Hopefully we can get to a growth level that they'll do it on their own. But if not, that's where they're looking for the funding. And right now, our project is all on the west side because the east side kind of seems to be taking care of itself.
Well, the west side is the more important side, it's more populated, so. And all the complaints that we heard from the parents and whatnot during homeschool time was from the west side, so. Okay, also, the city that won't be named, any buzz on their abandoned sewer platform or that footprint out there? Have you heard any buzz about, I know the community was asked for input on that, their community was, I don't know what became of that, have you heard anything, what could happen there? Their large, the holding pond area.
Oh, I have not heard anything in regards to that. I don't know that we've been asked for any comments or any consideration of.
I'm sure we wouldn't be, but I was just curious.
Yeah, no, nothing has been brought to my attention, so.
Okay, and then lastly, there was a retail outlet was gonna be put in, on south of 47, just at the bend. It's a duplicate store of what's already here in town. Is there anything to do about that, or is it, and would they close the other one? I mean, it seems redundant, but yet I can see where that retail outlet has a place. It just, I don't know if we need 2, and it, I don't know.
Mayor, council, so they're either backing out or dragging the ball really slow. We have not had them meeting any of our land use applications, so they'll now miss most likely the February planning commission meeting. So I don't know if their plans are falling apart some. I know they're struggling at their other locations.
Very much so. They closed, I mean, due to lack of employees.
Oh, okay.
Oh, yeah, I mean, it's shut down. It'll be 5 in the afternoon and it'll be dark. Now, they might have picked up something thanks to the enthusiasm of those who are still there, but it's a bad situation for it. And corporate doesn't seem, what you hear, scuttlebutt is, corporate doesn't seem to care. There's nobody coming from, Milwaukee to help out or whatever. I mean, it's either feast or famine there. And again, it serves an area of town that needs a retail place that doesn't want to pay convenience store prices, but I just thought it was, I don't know, it doesn't look good, I think, when there's 2 of the same thing in both ends of town. I don't know. I just think, but is there a purchase agreement for the property then? They even have that?
I believe there's a purchase agreement and they've completed all the surveying and site work.
Oh, wow.
Their next step would be to come to City Hall for the lot split and then for their site plan approval. It's my understanding that we can't single out a specific store if it's allowed for commercial retail. They haven't indicated whether they're going to close or sell their other store, at least to staff.
I think it'd be a hardship for that side of town if they did close, it's too bad. But I was just curious, and I have nothing against the outlet itself, it just seemed, in rural areas, you see it on the ends, outskirts of town. I don't know. I'm excited about the future. I appreciate your hard work, what's going on. It's interesting to see the future of the northeast corner out of 47, what that could be with its potential. Also excited about senior housing that will be, they're moving forward. Big projects like that take time, but there people like that and entrepreneurs and business people that are making a commitment to our our little bird here, that's pretty cool. It's a lot of money to get to a certain point. It's a lot of money when you finally put it in the ground. It'll be an awesome asset once it's here, especially for the people that are, generations turnover. Guys like me and the mayor can't be here forever, so we might not have a place to stay. But, other than that, thanks very much. That's all I have.
Let me ask you one question before I turn over to Rob. On this CenturyLink deal, are they bidding against each other for the right to put their service in the developments? Or can't they both put their service in the development?
So, Mayor and Council, the problem we have on the west side is there currently isn't enough homes to support the providers putting their own backbones down the streets. So what they're asking for is, for city financial assistance. So for example, Midco would come in and they'll pay, they would contribute, and don't hold me to these numbers, but 2/3, and the city would be responsible for 1/3, okay? Based on the number of residents, based on what's out there today. Being that we only have one pot of money, if we were to request both of them to lay lines, they both want money. So we could ask both of them to put lines in the street. They're both going to be looking for a public handout because there isn't enough residents right now to support those lines on their own. So what the grants are is the grants are where we would apply for a project by picking one or the other, but we have to have the price comparison of both to ensure we're doing the best and highest use of what we have.
Right, but I just got an email today, where the League of Minnesota Cities talking about a $2 billion plus infrastructure growth in the state.
I think that's part of the problem, is everyone's rushing to put this in, and that's why she's probably not hearing back from them, because now there's a mad rush on all these companies and extreme pressure and a lot of money flowing around. That's part of the issue.
It always comes down to dollars, but you would think these people want to get their lines in there, as the areas grow, and they start with small group homes today, and that expands upon that throughout the expansion phases and stuff like that. You're gonna get your money back long term. I mean, these people, when you're the only show in town giving up cable, how do you lose money? When you only show town doing DSL, how do you lose money? I just want, I might be that old capitalist years ago. I like the competition, better pricing, better quality, better service. But today it seems like we got a stacked deck. It just doesn't make sense to me. If you put it in there now, and you start out with 10 homes, that 10 homes are 20, 30, 40, 50 homes, you're gonna get it back. And yet this money's out there to the federal government and the state, as I just said today, over $2 billion in infrastructure, and some of that's gonna go into broadband. They obviously know that, don't they?
Oh, they do.
We have a long line of people just like us, not sure. That's part of the problem.
Well, I just don't understand CenturyLink. And let me ask one more question before I turn it over. I was like, who are you talking to at CenturyLink? Do you have to go higher up or something like that, or is it just a person who's just so lazy?
I have the people, when I was on that phone call, I had people from probably 4 different states. So I've got a regional rep, I have the person who's working with the site plans and designs. It's a team. So my meeting was with their team. They're getting hit by so when you think about the money, the federal level is giving out money, telling we want border to border. The state's giving out money, we want border to border. And Oakland County took part of their funds that are still federal and expand. Here, we're gonna give money to every city. Every city that has a gap is calling CenturyLink, Midco, Xfinity. We're all tripping over each other at this point. And these providers know all that money is out there. So whether they pick you or me, that money is gonna come. It is not about the money anymore. They're gonna get paid.
Well, hire more help then for crying out loud. Put America back to work.
So right now, that I met with Nova County, had all of us come into one room, and Columbus, Linwood Township, myself, East Bethel is doing a project now. Then we're all asking them for the same numbers, and we're all asking for the same deadlines. So the providers know we're out there, but they're trying to manage all of the requests as we're back here kind of all requesting.
Well, they're doing a poor job at it, in my opinion, but I guess it's out of our hands. Okay, thank you, Kate. Rob, your comments, please.
Okay, I'll start off with great report. I kind of looking at a business perspective for, let's call it CenturyLink. If East Bethel is, looking at 5 million, and we're looking at, 700,000. I'm pretty sure we're down on the bottom of the list, per se, don't quote any numbers. But you know what I mean, it is a business aspect for them too, yeah, they're gonna get paid, but they want to get a bigger piece of the pie, so it's just trickle down economics. In that aspect, I hope we can get there, but we'll see. Not to rehash the code enforcement, but I ran some of the numbers, and if this is true, we have 93% of our residents, that are calling in or whatever, only complaining about 165 residents per se, and only less than 7% of those are getting a citation. So, like the mayor said, we're not here trying to raise the fees and create this revenue stream through code enforcement. It's the best work we can do for the maximum number of residents. If they're not satisfied with X property being whatever their complaint is, whether it's driving down their property value, whatever their complaint is, they're complaining to the city. The city had to set up some sort of code enforcement, because when we sat through meetings, 5+ years ago, 2 years before that, it didn't seem like there was any fix for code enforcement. It was a complaint-based system, but it really didn't seem like there was much to do about, let's improve it. And now we're doing that, not because of the residents that are not complying. We're doing it for the residents that want our city to look good. So that's how I look at code enforcement. I'm very much property oriented, but when your property drags down someone else's values, then we have to have code enforcement. That's what that is. And only 7% of the people don't want to comply with what the issues are. So I don't have any complaints on how our system looks right now. The septic system properties for our residents, please, there's 771 properties that have your own septic, your own well. Please get them inspected. You don't want your system to fail and contaminate your well. So please follow the regulations through the city, which also meets state and federal requirements. Please get your septic systems inspected based on policies of the city, state, and federal level. That's all I really have for my bandwagon. Nice report.
Thank you, Mayor, and well said on the code. I like that.
Can I say one thing? Please. I want to give kudos to John. I brought out something to, he doesn't get you to do a normal report, so brought it to Joe Coleman's attention in mid-December that he ranked the store, the bottle shop, ranked number 4 of the top 10 liquor stores in the state as far as sales margin overall. I mean, they beat out other places, but Apple Valley, Savage, Mound, St. Francis was number 4. After that, Rogers, Eden Prairie, Lakeville, Freely. I mean, those are big hitters. Lexington, Farmington, much bigger, per capita wise. So 11.1% overall. Apple Valley with 13.3. Savage 11.7, Mountain 11.5, St. Francis 11.1, and they went down from there. So congratulations, even before the renovation. I asked Joe if we should put it out there for the public to see, and then it's like, maybe we shouldn't be, pounding our chest about profit. We want to make some money, and he said maybe they put it in the lunchroom. But kudos to your team, and that's a pretty big deal. This was in Minneapolis St. Paul Business Journal, is where it was posted. So that stuff like that doesn't come along just anybody. So all your hard work is paying off. So I appreciate it.
But also on top of that, just to let you know, I mean, you should be happy with that, let the public know, because that revenue helps them keep our tax levy rate low, and also for special projects. It goes back in the city. That's what it does. So it's beneficial all the way around. And hopefully with this expansion, we'll see more of that. So, whatever.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Thank you for the reports, everyone. Appreciate that. And now moving on to council member reports. Sarah, I'm gonna start with you.
I attended the work session. I did field some questions from, I do want to thank the folks, that called me about Green Valley and talked to me. I hope that I clarified some things for you, and then also the people who called me about code compliance, whether or not you did call Jody, like I told you to or not. I hope that you did. And again, you get the information in your letters, use that information to help yourself.
Thank you, sir. Very well put. Rob?
I also attended the work session. It was very fruitful. I did field phone calls also from Green Valley. If anyone wants to continue to conversate about that, it will be coming up on the agendas here pretty soon. But if you want to call and talk to me, I'm more than welcome to give you my opinion on where I stand on landowners' rights. That is it.
Okay, thank you. Kevin?
I also attended the work session again. It's fun to be a little more candid and whatnot, even though it's recorded for the public, and we have no fears about that, but it's nice to be part of that. You think outside the box and throw some stuff around. I also received calls about Green Valley as well, and again, I encourage, it's the most outreach I've had in my 3 years here that, for a project, so it's just good that people are involved, whether it falls one way or the other, it's immaterial at this point, but people are, when they're concerned, they're doing something about it. They're being organized, they're being courteous and conscientious and respectful, and that's what it's really all about. And that's how stuff gets done. Other than that, I want to give a small tip of the hat to Superintendent Geesey. I've seen her, I follow Facebook, but she doesn't just talk the talk, she does walk the walk. And I put something out there, but it's just cool to see her. She got a driver's license, she's involved, a lot of superintendents can make that kind of money and just come in and have all their lieutenants do the work. Well, she's her own lieutenant, so tip of the hat to her. As far as she's a public official more or less, and she's got a big nut there, and she hasn't left for another job, which happens a lot of times. People can pull up their stakes and get their benefits and take all their extras and perks and stuff and go somewhere else easily snapped up. So hopefully she stays around quite a while and can turn this reputation around, and because whatever's good for the school is good for the city. So.
Well, that's been said before, and I agree with you 100%. It seems like sometimes it only works one way, not the other. So let's hope they understand as much as we would like them to understand that. As far as that one city you don't mention, I can only
The city that won't be mentioned.
The only thing that I can say is I hope it doesn't fall on deaf ears, but all the time. So, okay. On that, I'm just going to tell you, the liquor community, the parish and myself and the architect met on last week or
Thursday.
Tuesday?
Thursday.
Thursday. Got a good time with that. When you're having fun with that project. We met and we're going over the bills to finalize it out. Right now, the only thing that will be escrowed will be some heatless repair, stucco repair on the outside of the building, and some redo of the new addition and painting of that area. That will be escrowed for a springtime, summertime repair. The lower cabinets in the wine tasting area still have to be dealt with. And there's been a situation with their walk-in cooler for Freon that will be solved tomorrow. So right now we're winding down. The store it will have one big cleanup as part of our bid, and then and fully operational as it has been. Many compliments on the store. Again, kudos to your staff, Tom. We just had him sent to Jen to hire an individual that was there for many years coming back, so that helps. But I have to hand it to you and Crystal and Kareem for holding down the fort really well through this whole thing and your patience for the whole thing. I know, as I said before, even though I've been in this for many, many years, it was getting to me at the end. So I'm glad that it's winding down there. So we'll hopefully get this settled here with the numbers and stuff like that. One benefit that I had is that I was there for most of all of it, and I know we will pay them every penny we owe them, not one less, not one more. They will get paid. But at the end of the day, I'm satisfied with the outcome of the store. A lot of hard work, and we can move on from that. But we're going to be doing some close and returns on the front doors coming up springtime. We'll make it a little stronger for the doors that show a little easier. And then I'm sure that will, one thing I'll bring to council next year, will be landscaping and sprinkler system for the lawns. So, we have a good looking building, and we have to make landscaping match it, but that'll be brought to your attention. That's why we hold out in the beginning for the construction, we'll deal with it later on. And it probably was a good thing to do, especially with water being as tight as it was, and the summers being hot as it was. We would have wasted the money to do a lawn at that point. Other than that, like I say, again, the staff's doing very well there, and I think you're, this new addition to your part-time, that's gonna help out a lot. So, very much thank you to everybody. That, I did a lot of work there, but I couldn't pull it off without the team behind me, and I want to thank you all for that. Doesn't always take a team, and that always brings me to my last conversation, bit of a conversation. As I always say at every meeting, this is a team, and it works as a team, and things get done as a team. Whether it's a staff member that brings up a situation, an issue, or a council member that does whatever, nothing goes to fruition or ends up in a completion form unless it's done as a team. We all work together, and we're a cohesive force, and from the first days that when I started out being mayor and saw Joe Coleman write on there on an offering memo, Team St. Francis, that has stuck with me, and I told Joe to emphasize that, and he's done very well with that, because we are a team, and we work together, and it's been for me, it's been a real honor and privilege to work with you guys. I don't worry about problems, because I know eventually we'll solve them, hopefully a little faster, a little less expensive, time-wise and everything, but I always know that we're gonna solve the problems. When we came in here in the beginning, we had to deal with a lot of past problems, and that was difficult at the time. I remember in the discussions with Joe and Kate about that, frustrations being summoned out and all that, but at the same time, we worked through that, and growth, by the way, is a double-edged sword. You're gonna have people that are positive, are for growth, and people that aren't. You're gonna have problems that are created by growth, and that's what we're facing here today. And the situation that we did by the restructuring administration, as we have, will help us, pursue this growth in a good way. And I think it's really important to take advantage of the growth that we have right now. And hopefully, the seeds that we plant today will pay off for big dividends down the road, 10, 20, 30 years down the road. So, again, kudos to staff and kudos to the council for working together as a team. And again, I just want to emphasize before I stop here, please, residents, you need to talk to us and not the social media. You'll get nowhere with social media, only frustrated, more mad, blame everybody else for your lot in life. The best thing to do is give us an opportunity to solve the situation for your issue. And then if we don't solve it to your liking, which may happen, but it will be a fully vetted issue that we'll look into. But at the same time, at least then you can say, well, we gave an opportunity. I would rather have you give me an opportunity and council and staff to solve something and maybe not your liking, at least give us the opportunity. And when you go on Facebook and then hear the misinformation and spread that misinformation, they're not helping you to help us help you better. And really, come to us, talk to us. We're not that hard to talk to. All right, that's enough of that. Anyways, any other business to talk about? Nothing?
Further business.
Okay, well, barring any further business, I'm going to turn this meeting on Tuesday, January 18th at 7:45. Thank you.